Okay, sorry, I forgot to bring myself in. Okay, people, how's it going? Let me just straighten out the camera, get the lighting straight in my studio. Can everyone hear me? Show by way of Y or N. I haven't been here. I just got here. Like, I still hear kids upstairs because kids are not asleep yet. I just got my own notification that I'm live. That's good. Let's see. Skydiver Dave, Skydiver, 7-8, never stay up late. Uncivil like a cow. Okay, so we got Y is 923 blue taken. Gin bottle, because blue sleeps faster than Tuesday. I think that's meme of the month. I don't know what that is. So while everyone comes in, welcome. Good evening to a spontaneous. I thought the kids were going to be asleep so that this would be a relaxing live stream. Okay. It may or may not be a relaxing live stream, at least for both parents, because one parent is up with 3 kids, apparently, and the dogs are up. The dogs are up as well. Uncivil is in the house. Why is blue 923 taken? I think it's the same county, but what do we know? I am new here. Uncivil law, Texas living, streaming the protests in Texas or in Austin, I believe. And interesting, very interesting. Okay, so while we let's see here, Viva Frei Skydiver, ich bin here, as we say. Let's get this going. How's everybody doing? First of all, how's everybody doing? It's been a while. I think it's been a while. It hasn't been that long, but it's been long enough. How's everybody doing? Let's see if we can keep this interactive, spontaneously at exactly 30 minutes after the hour. I like to be punctual, and I left a kid very disappointed upstairs in as we were putting him to sleep because it was 9:27 and he was not asleep, and that means I'd done my best. Yeah. So where do we start? I mean, where do we start? Let's start with the state of affairs. We are in June. The lockdown in Canada started in March to April, April to May, May to June. 3 months. It's over 3 months now. We had our medical experts, giving advice on how people should protest responsibly. Tens of thousands of people taking to the streets while they are putting businesses out of business because a restaurant can't operate at 50% capacity, or at least now it can, but it couldn't before. It's crazy. I don't like tweeting the memes, but you can't. Even we have eyes, we have brains. However we feel about the protests, I don't know who's sort of against the protests. I know who's against the riots and the looting. I think we can all agree on the legitimacy of the uproar about what happened. You have tens of thousands of people protesting in the streets of Canada, hundreds of thousands in the streets of the US, where for the last 3 months, we have been told we can't go into a commerce. Commerces can't open up because of the risk of spreading. Churches can't be opening at more than 25% capacity. I did a vlog on this earlier this week because of the risk of the spread of a Schmendrick. And now you have people in the streets and getting government sanctions and government approval. I mean, people approving of this, notwithstanding. And interesting thing, I had a discussion with a friend who the epidemiologist that this person relies on, or at least consults, was saying, sure, there's some risk, but the social justice aspect of this is such that I support the right to protest. I support the right to protest, period. I objected to the locking down of the businesses and the shutting them down for what, we can now appreciate might have been something of an exaggerated concern. If this can be justified by the same experts who warranted that we can't open churches to more than 25% or 100 people capacity, I think we can acknowledge that there's something of inconsistency of the rules. So tomorrow night, by the way, I'm doing a live stream with Robert Barnes. So I don't want to talk about the Michael Flynn and the Judge Sullivan judgment, as much as I do want to talk about it tonight. Can't talk about it tonight. We're going to talk about it tomorrow, and it's going to be amazing. And we're going to talk about the charges against the Chauvin and the other cops involved in the George Floyd situation. So we're not going to do that tonight. This was to check in. It's been a while. We should have an informal. Let's just see if I can bring up some comments. We got Sheldon Masservey. Sheldon, thank you very much. Nice to see you. I support the right to protest the lockdown. Thank you very much, TYVM. I'd never seen that acronym before, but I knew what it was. I want to get non-super chat comments. James PFP, and to ask for God. Okay, don't know that's someone else's conversation. Kenneth Davis, thank you very much. Cartoon Fox, still waiting for some hot takes on the OIC firearms ban. Thoughts on accidental ban of 12-gauge shotguns with removable chokes. Okay, so I got a few people have sent me. This is the order in council in Canada banning of assault-style firearms, and I have been told to say firearms and not weapons. And for anybody who thought I might have been saying that judgmentally, if I were talking about crossbows, I would have said weapons as well. And if I were talking about BB guns, I probably would have said weapons as well. So I will refer to them as firearms. The order in council ban of the firearms, I did a vlog on that. It's an amazing thing. I have been given copies of proceedings from 2 different lawsuits, which I'm going to look over. I had to get to the Judge Sullivan one first before I could get to the OIC, and that'll be longer term. So you're going to get some hot takes. It's not going to be hot takes. It's just going to be breakdowns and fair analyses and explanations, and we'll try to make sense of it. Some of these comments I can't bring up. I have to make sure that I don't get nailed on YouTube. Viva Frei, will you be speaking about Ontario declaring that intoxication can be used in the defense of sexual assault? I did a vlog on that on voluntary intoxication, about the kid who did the mushrooms and assaulted a teacher, broken butt naked, out of his mind on drugs, busted into a total stranger's house and assaulted the person, and was let off because of what we call automatism. So I did a vlog on this already, Elliot Bradshaw. First of all, thank you for the question. And but I did a vlog on this, and it was called voluntary intoxication. And I said, there used to be a criteria that when you willingly ingested drugs, you could not then use the side effects of those drugs to justify or use as a defense to a violent crime, or any crime in particular. So I don't agree with voluntary intoxication. You have to assume, barring the exceptions to voluntary intoxication, which is like you take a drug which is to treat hyperactivity and it triggers some sort of other involuntary disorder. That's the type of voluntary intoxication which I think we can all sort of agree with. But taking recreational drugs and then having an adverse effect that causes you to commit a crime, I don't think it's controversial to say that you should be required to deal with the consequences of those actions. Can you speak about the updating of the OIC banning 2022? Okay, so not yet. Sooner than later. I need to make sure I know what I'm talking about before I can know what I'm talking about. I know what chokes are. I took the course, but I need to make sure I know what I'm talking about before I can actually do a vlog on it. Fellow Quebec fishermen, do you know what a wawanish is? Wawanish. Okay, so it's not a wawanish. It is it's a trout. It's a lake trout. Booyah. Tell me if it is. Tell me if I'm right. I think I'm right. What if they used a neck restraint because he had okay. No, so no jokes, there's no jokes about there's no jokes with George Floyd, and there's no jokes either with David, with the police officer who got shot. This is all it's all a bad situation in all respects. Oh my goodness, we have 666 viewers. So let's start with one subject at a time. Today I had something of a Twitter. It's nothing. Candace Owens tweeted today. We're making a martyr of someone who had a criminal record. They're not to be. We shouldn't be painting murals of this person, et cetera, et cetera. And I tweeted back to her, not that she'll ever see my tweet. I tweeted back to her, whatever criminal record George Floyd had before this incident is absolutely irrelevant to what happened that day. Until there's some link that might coordinate something. Well, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. So the idea of like trying to explain away what happened to him because of his criminal record, or trying to say he's not a saint, so we shouldn't be, upset about what happened to him, or we shouldn't be as upset, or we shouldn't be making his criminal record is not just, it was irrelevant that day, and it's irrelevant to what happened to him. And then the second thing I said is it's even worse than that, because it's irrelevant to what happened to him, but the idea that you would hold over somebody's head who's a victim in the present time, that you would hold over the fact that they sentenced and they did their time to another crime a decade ago, confirms the idea in some people's minds that like you never, even if you do your time, it's not enough, and society will always hold it over your head for whatever happens to you in the future, and it sort of deters and undermines one of the basic tenets of criminal justice reform, which is do your time, and unless you're a recurring criminal, it's you don't hold that over somebody's head. So if someone is a habitual criminal, yes, you hold prior convictions over their head. If someone is a victim of a crime in the present, you don't bring up their past criminal convictions. But I understand the idea, like he wasn't a saint, so they shouldn't be making murals about him. That's an opinion. But the idea that his criminal record is somehow relevant in any way to this is it can undermine sort of the very fabric of what criminal justice reform is supposed to do, and also how society views it. Like, you're going to be fishing around. It's not as though he was in the midst of committing a crime where past crimes might be relevant. It's not like he was being sentenced. He was a victim of police abuse. His criminal history, I don't care that he wasn't a saint. Nobody's a saint. That doesn't mean you don't mourn the death, and that doesn't mean it's not an outright inexcusable tragedy. I wanted the COVID cure, but I don't steal, so I broke my own window, took my own TV and yelled. Okay. So, well, you can't hide the fact that people are going to be very frustrated about government policy that has locked down businesses for the last 3 months and then has found a way to make an exception for what are arguably legitimate protests. You're not going to be able to hide people's frustration. You can't ignore the argument. You can't ignore it. It would be disingenuous for politicians, and it will be, because they will ignore it. Say we forbid churches from holding full congregations because of maximum occupancy concerns, because of the spread of a pandemic. But when it comes to mass protests in the streets for social justice, we can put the pandemic concerns on hold. You can't blame people for noticing objecting to that, and you can't blame them. You can't ignore it either. Mr. Robert Pilot says, what do you do when rioters are arrested and immediately released due to bail reform? What do you do? They currently have no deterrent. Well, so I know what Robert Barnes would say to this. I know what I think about this. Released due to bail reform doesn't mean that they're released with no records. They have a court date. They'll show back at court, or they won't. And if they don't show back at court, they'll have another warrant for their arrest. What's the flip side? That you detain mass amounts of protesters until their hearing dates for their accusations. They're accused. They either post bail or there's no bail because they get out on no cash bail, and see what happens. The alternative is you just mass incarcerate protesters indefinitely, and then see what happens when that happens. You want to talk about overcrowding the jails? Maybe overcrowding them with people who are arrested for protesting, or for even breaking windows, whatever. It's not to undermine what they're doing. The question is, do you detain them indefinitely until their trial dates, or do you release them on their own recognizance? And if they don't come back, then they have bigger problems. It's not black and white. These are the questions you have to ask. Beth, they set a Wendy's on fire during the riots. Guess they're serving Bernie's instead of Frosties now. Too soon. I don't know. The property damage, it's not, there's arguably never too soon, but other stuff, yes. Dio the Creative. Hello, Dio. Nice to see you. Wawanish. Oh, landlocked salmon. Damn it. Max Messling, thank you very much. Damn it. Well, technically, lake trout are highly evolved landlocked salmon. What do we say here? Please like the stream, all 666 of you. Now we're at 888. Any word on the Aquila versus Sargon ruling on fees? So this might be a very meandering Q&A. I'm into it. I'm looking into it. Thus far, no news. Dirk, if it's not a trout, I'm removing my leg. Shoot. Damn it. Okay, so that's what happened to me today. Candace Owens, I didn't like the tweet. I followed Candace. She has an interesting perspective. I agree with her sometimes. I disagree with her other times. She's not the devil incarnate when I disagree with her, and she is not God Almighty when I do agree with her. People don't seem to understand this. What was the other thing that happened today? Well, hold on one second. I saw this. Space Chief says, it's really weird to see people not understand that cops aren't there to debate the constitutionality of their actions and that it's the court's job. True. Well, the whole thing about being detained without bail or posting, money for bail is that you're accused, you're innocent until proven guilty. You'll have your trial date. The question is, are you a flight risk? Are you a violent recidivative risk, or, at risk of repeating? And what do you do? For people objecting of them arresting, detaining, booking, and then releasing. Flip side, you want to keep them in jail for months for breaking a window? I mean, you do that, and then you're going to have people accusing the U.S. of becoming, a Singapore or a China where you get, detained and flogged for spitting in the streets. There's a flip side. The rioters, they're going to live with the consequences. The Molotov cocktail lawyers were released. They're gonna, I'm not sure that I would be support detaining them indefinitely. Are they at risk of flight? I don't know what the conditions of their release were. They might have had to forfeit their passports, and maybe they're not going to be leaving anywhere anytime soon, especially since the borders are closed. They're not going anywhere. Might they not show up to their hearing date? Unlikely. They are members of at least they possibly were members of a professional order. They're easy to find, easy to identify, easy to locate. So what's the flip side? The flip side is you lock them up and detain them indefinitely until their trial date. Not sure I like that alternative. So hold on one second. What do we got here? Okay, so I won't read that. But words get thrown around. We have to make sure we're using words properly. But certainly can be accused of hurling weapons of mass destruction. So let's see here. Pariach says, why 3 funerals still as politicians will attend? Why can't go to funerals, but they can? Biden does. Well, I don't think we need to do a massive stream on the double standards. I mean, it's the double standards are enough to drive you mad. I mean, you can't have a funeral of more than 10 people if you're a regular citizen. You can't operate your business, period, because of the risk. It's so dangerous, you can't do it. Now that they've allowed some businesses to open at 50%, some at 25%, it's still so dangerous you can't do it. But when it comes to protesting in the streets in the tens of the thousands in close proximity, screaming and hurling, we had I don't know, her name is Dr. Tam, I think, in Canada, actually saying, go to protest because it's your right. As if it's your right to protest, but it's not your right to operate your business that you spent 20 years building. But side issue, it's your right to protest. I agree. Go protest. Don't scream. Don't open your mouths. Use devices to make noise. I mean, this is coming from our leaders in Canada. But the question was, so I know people who have had family members pass away, and they have had a maximum of 10. They've had to have open area mourning outside, and they've had to have Zoom funerals. But when it comes to mass protests, when the politicians say, or when people say this is okay, it's justified. When it comes to the photo ops that everybody objected to when Mike Pence was delivering boxes to a hospital, all of a sudden, other photo ops become totally acceptable, even if it means breaking the rules that they've been imposing on everybody else. Sullivan has shown us it's a 2-tier judicial system. It's a 2-tier political system. It's a 2-tier system. It might be even a 3-tier system. And it's enough to make you angry. Why is Blue 923 taken? Can you address the Anna Slats of Rebel being detained? I don't know the details. So I was in touch with Ezra. I know what happened. She was detained 2 nights ago, kept for 2 nights, 36 hours, so 2 nights, 1 day, and released without apparently without her attorneys who were mandated by Ezra and Rebel to actually represent her. They booked her and whatever they do and processed her and released her without notifying her counsel, and then just threw her on the street. So no, I don't know any more details than that. It's interesting. I'm going to look into it, and I've got Nate Brody's in New York and can help me pull up whatever docs I need from New York to see what the situation is. But I don't think it's going to be a radically novel situation from law. It's just an amazing thing where reporters, taking at face value what the situation is, were arrested for breaking curfew, despite the fact that they were reporting and apparently are supposed to be exempt from curfew because they're reporters. I don't know how it works, but apparently detained, arrested, kept in, from what Ezra said on his 8-minute live stream, maximum security. I don't know where she was kept. I take all information with a grain of salt. What we know, as a matter of fact, is she was detained for 2 nights and then released. So, on the one hand, everyone's saying, let's detain other protesters. And then on the other hand, saying that they're not releasing, what's the word I'm looking for? Journalists fast enough. We have to make sure just not to jump onto the bandwagon of the conclusions that support our theories for the purposes of that argument. People should be released from prison, generally speaking, sooner than later for non-violent, exquisitely dangerous crimes if they're not at risk of flight or recidivism. So no, that's all I know about that. I was looking into it, but we'll see where we go. Mr. Rover Pilot, they do not simply arrest protesters. They arrest rioters, burning, throwing bricks, assault. People are back on the street within 2 hours, in time to light the next building on fire, and they nearly emptied the jail for CV. So, well, can't disagree with the second part of that. They were letting violent criminals out early, before, but they might have been scheduled to be released in August. They were releasing them in July, just because. Make sure they have enough room to avoid CV. As for the rest, flip side, Mr. Rover Pilot, there's tens of thousands of protesters. If you keep 10 or 15 or 20 or maybe even 50, what's it going to do? I mean, how many do you have to keep in prison before you think it's going to have the effect of quelling the riots? You don't have enough room. So the people want to go out after being booked and released on their own recognizance and then go back and recommit. They will have their comeuppance, but I don't think detaining them is going to quell the riots in any meaningful way. As a matter of just pure observation, they are but a snowflake in the avalanche, which is going to be the perfect segue into what I want to talk about next, which is that book that I read that I was unable to produce videos because I was dying to finish that book. John Ronson, So You've Been Publicly Shamed. Adam Pensant 209. When you rob a pregnant woman at gunpoint, you're vermin and get what you deserve, no sympathy. Okay, can cops ask for a trial by judge? Rest in peace, David Dorn. David Dorn, no question. It's a tragedy. There's no but. Deserves a mural. Nobody wants a mural. People would rather be alive. That's the bottom line. Robbing a pregnant woman at gunpoint, it's inflammatory. It's 140 characters for Twitter. You run into the risk of playing devil's advocate. Okay, when did he went to jail for 5 years for that? If that's the case, and you reiterate your comment after going to jail for 5 years for doing it, we might have different views of what penalty, punishment, and rehabilitation is about. And then you can get a pregnant woman. How pregnant? Did anyone know? Did he know? Was it obvious? I mean, you get into the simplified 30,000 foot overview, which translates well for a tweet. Then you get into the details of what a lawyer and what a prosecutor would be asking to understand the nuances. So it works well for social media, but it doesn't work well for understanding situations and the human condition. And the bottom line is, whatever he did in 2009 was convicted for and sentenced for is 2007, and he was convicted and sentenced to 5 years. Hey, he might have been an aggressor in the past. That doesn't mean he wasn't a victim on that day. My 2 cents. Some good news. I found $6 metal detecting in the park. 2 toonies, a loonie, and $6.41. A quarter, a nickel, a dime, and a penny. I hope that adds up. The good news, this too shall pass. And with lessons learned, and that's it. So let me see here. So hold on one second. We got sweet, merciful goodness. Pip Chanoir says, any further thoughts on Rosenstein's Senate hearing and McCabe? Also, any updates on Sullivan? I've come to this chat late, so apologies. So Sullivan we did. Booyah. Peace and booyah. Pip Chanoir, which is Pip Chanoir. In French is the black cat, Pip. No, I have no thoughts on Rosenstein's Senate hearing because I don't know. I didn't watch it. Or McCabe. Sullivan, we did the update. Check out my video from yesterday. It's crazy. And then we'll see where it goes. I want to see what the Court of Appeal is going to say to that. But Pip, thank you very much, Pip. And the black cat. Good luck. Black cats are good luck. George Floyd was a sacrifice to cure COVID. We kneel and I'm not going to read it because I don't want anyone accusing me of making light of tragedy. None ya biz, but I mean that is the meme that's going around. Is setting aside that it's George Floyd is a tragedy. There's no but, there's no nothing. People in the streets now. We're going to see what happens in 2 weeks, and then we might appreciate inconsistencies in government policies, or at the very least inaccuracies in expert opinions. I watched a bunch of Rebel viewers turn on Ezra today in chats when he explained Anna was an active Marxist. Viva Frei is weird. I mean, this is the other thing. Is like, when someone says you never know. You never know these days anymore. That's the bottom line. And it's not to lend credence to this. I don't know. You hear someone is arrested. Okay. You don't know. And that's it. It's like we have to appreciate, like, and I'm so reluctant now on Twitter to retweet anything because I saw the video of the people rubbing off the BLM spray paint and the audio behind it. Like, you get to a point where, like, you watch, I mean, if anyone hasn't seen that video, 3 people are rubbing off spray paint from a wall. It looked like BLM, and they look like they're getting accused of racism for rubbing off the spray paint because the message should stand. And you don't know who's shooting it. You don't know who's making the video. You don't know what audio on the end that you don't see might be modified. You don't know anything anymore. First casualty of war is truth. So you don't know anymore. So this is why, regardless, until you have been burnt on unless you have been burnt on a source and you can rely on that source, you can rely on it until there's questionable material. But I saw it. I just don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with the impartial information that I have, and I'm reluctant to go all in on anything anymore. But I saw that I didn't see those turning on Ezra comments, but it's interesting. Daniel Collins, will you be going over the U.S. Copyright Office release of a 2-year report of YouTube, DMCA, and their safe harbor laws? It was released on May 20, 2020. Section 512. Screenshot, because I didn't know about this. I'll look into that. There's too much stuff. At the end of the day, also, there's just too much stuff to... Beautiful Nunya. There's just too much stuff to deal with. Get a haircut. You know what? I'm going to go for a straight summer fro. I'm going to go all summer. Not cut this. Yeah. If I can just stop pulling out my facial hair, that'd be good. Looks good. Looks okay. How does policing get better by taking away 150 million resources? This is another discussion that I cannot get into on Twitter because it does not allow for sufficiently nuanced discussion. People talking about defunding the police while talking about eliminating Second Amendment rights. I mean, what do you say? How do you have this discussion when you're limited to 140 or 180 characters on Twitter? You can't have this discussion. It's not a sensible discussion to have on social media. It's not a sensible position as far as I'm concerned. It's not a sensible measure of protest. And they were talking about defund the police for civil rights violations. How about defund the government then? Bernie Sanders is tweeting it. How about we defund the government for their civil rights violations for the wars that they wage in foreign countries? How about we defund the government? See what Bernie Sanders has to say about that. Sorry. It's a nuanced discussion, one that I'm not prepared to have. Ramen Yee. Welcome to the club, Ramen. Okay, we got that is a random number right there. That is what happens when you get a VPN go crazy. Okay, we got Drene65. Why didn't Candace mention Breonna Taylor or others that have lost their lives recently by police unnecessarily? It's a nuanced. I say it's going to turn into. I'm going to turn it like the Tim Pool. It's complicated. These are not discussions that should be had on social media. Period. Everybody wants to, and we're going to get into now the John Ronson book. Everybody wants to go to social media. They don't want to just express themselves. They don't want to express a sensible idea. They want to express something in an antagonistic way that's going to approve the people that agree. That is going to, not appease is the word I'm looking for, but rather that is going to satisfy the people that agree with them, and that is going to antagonize the people who don't agree with them. And that's the type of engagement that Twitter and social media rewards. And it's not the type of engagement that leads anywhere in terms of a satisfactory mutual understanding. So there are too many examples, and I've been having these discussions privately with people. There are too many examples of police brutality to characterize it as one issue, to racialize it as one issue, and to summarize it with one incident. There are too many incidents of police brutality, and to racialize it is it ignores a slew of other victims of police abuse. The fact of the matter is, as far as I'm concerned, I'll take whatever flack that I'll get. Police abuse is an issue of police abuse. And what's the solution? It's unclear. I mean, what's the solution in certain? We have police abuse in Canada. We have in Quebec. We have at one point in time had a very notoriously aggressive police force. It wasn't necessarily racial. It was just abuse of power. It was trigger happy police officers. It was potentially underfunded, undertrained, overstressed, and it leads to abuse. Doesn't justify it. What's the solution? The solution is not, as far as I'm concerned, to narrow the debate to something that is only one aspect of it. It's police abuse, but the media is what it is. The media takes what ought to be a unifying moment, a unifying moment that everybody can agree on, and they find a way to be divisive and to create division, even within the people who agree with the overall issue. It's upsetting. Michael Haas, can you go over the murder 2 charge? How will the autopsy report play into this? Okay, tune in tomorrow night because I'm going to discuss this with Robert. I've been having my discussions with people as to why it's not murder 1. People say it has. This is with respect to George Floyd. The cops are charged now, or at least Chauvin's charged. The question is, my question is, why isn't it murder 1? The answer that I've been given, that requires premeditation. And my answer is, okay, well, after 2 minutes of suffocating someone, you've had your premeditation. After being warned by bystanders that the person is not responsive, you've had your warning. It becomes premeditation. I'd like to have this discussion with the Barnes because I think he's going to know better than me. Okay, let me see. I'm missing a bunch of stuff here. My pilot, Mr. River Pilot, I want investigation as to the placement of bricks, as does everyone. And they will, because these bricks are made somewhere. This is the other thing. It's like, nobody is ever smart enough to commit the perfect crime. Those bricks have, if they don't have labels on the bricks, like stamps as to where they're made, it's easily identifiable where bricks are made, especially en masse, because they have prints, they have molds. You find them, they'll find them. And that's it. It might fly now, but the hammer's going to fall sooner than later. Did y'all do OJ? Not yet. We didn't do OJ yet. Life of Brian. Haven't seen Life of Brian yet, actually. We haven't done OJ yet. Barnes gave me some homework, which I have not yet done, which I hope he's not watching I missed a bunch. Let me see if I got these. People are saying we're living in Stephen King's novel, but I think we're sliding into an Orwell novel. This is Triad. Game Misconduct says the problem with social media is that there is no actual discussion. It is people talking past their targets, hoping the others will see it and come to their dog pile on the wrong opinion. Let me get into that. What are your thoughts on ongoing narrative regarding the prevalence of systemic racism that exists in America, despite statistics showing otherwise? Loaded question, but we're going to get there in a second. That's Gabriel Hernandez. Let me see how many I've missed here. Let me see so we got social distancing for viruses and social distancing for mind viruses. Caleb, I think you listen to Scott Adams. I think you might listen to Scott Adams, and as do I, so I might get the reference. Dapper Dave, everybody's racist except the person claiming racism. So this is something I talked about in my ostensible, not defense, but in my clarification or expose of Amy Cooper versus Christian Cooper. When you start throwing out the accusations of racism, it's a lose-lose. It's like the power lies in the accusation. There's no defense to it, which is why when it becomes a meaningless accusation, congratulations, we've devalued what it actually means to be a racist. Is there a Canadian Serpico? Not that I know of, actually. I saw Serpico the movie, but see, I must have missed a lot here. Oh, here we go. So we got Triad. People are saying we're living in a Stephen King novel. No, we're not sliding into Orwell. Orwell was not ahead of his time. Orwell was with his time and with the past and with the future, because what Orwell was writing about was not about what's going to happen in the future. It's about what was happening in the present, what had happened in the past, and what will invariably happen in the future, because certain truths are timeless. And the more things change, the more things stay the same. what we're living now has always existed in one variation or another. It just materializes itself under different circumstances. So let that blow your mind for the rest of this stream. Okay, so let me see here. Where am I? Oh, I see stuff. Okay, oh, I see that one. I want to try to. Viva, would love to see a video on the difference between murder 1, 2, 3 and how difficult it is to prove intent. I'll get it on a stream with Nate Brody. I think he'll know better than me because he's a former cop, lawyer. No, he knows his stuff. So I did civil. I've never done that. I can't even pretend to have an expertise. I can learn and I can get a base understanding, but I will never be the expert until I get enough information to be an expert. Game misconduct. The problem with social media is that there is no actual discussion. It's people talking past their targets, hoping that the others will see it and come on the. In John Ronson's book, and it's not a new idea, that it's a dopamine rush. You know, when you click something and you see retweets and people agreeing with you, it feels good. It triggers some chemicals in the brain and makes you feel good and puts you on a high, much like gambling, much like hitting the jackpot. It's not different. The only difference is you're dealing with real people in real lives, and depending on what the dog pile is, it can have real consequences. Did I see Legal Eagle's tearful screed on the DC riots? I feel like his content gets priority in the YouTube algorithm. In my opinion, he's literally fake news. I did not see it. I have had difficulty with Legal Eagle since his tearful response to, it was Adam Schiff's, someone's speech during the impeachment. Desiderata. If nobody's ever read Desiderata, and if you've never read it, listen to the Lazy Boy song called Desiderata. Desiderata. Lutheran priest posted on a door, apparently, I don't know, 400 years ago. Do not feign emotions. If someone is sincerely that upset, if someone is sincerely that moved by an Adam Schiff speech during impeachment or whatever, I'm also, very rarely will you catch me expressing my emotions publicly unless something has happened, like, whatever. So yeah, do not feign love or affection. And do not feign human emotions, because it's a very basic form of manipulation. Crying doesn't make you right, and as far as I'm concerned, as terrible as it sounds, in cross-examination, crying actually means that I think you're not telling me the truth or you're being deceptive. Because typically people don't rush to cry; people try to avoid and retain their emotions, and it comes out in a different way. Rusty Mertz says, nothing to say except I think your voice and knowledge are absolutely necessary in these times, and I look forward to all of your videos. Thank you, Rusty. Thank you very much. You know what my only problem is? Getting back to, if nobody's read the book, I didn't read it. I listened to it on audiobook, and I listened to it at 1.3 speed, so it took me like 30% less. John Ronson's book, So You've Been Publicly Shamed. I realized why something about that book has tapped, like something about that subject matter of that book has always been very personal to me. And it's the idea of doing something involuntarily that ruins your life, or being discovered and having your life ruined, being discovered as a fraud and having your life ruined. Now, a lot of people are going to be asking, like, seems like a lot of projection. Why would these things be a concern to me? I have my own OCD issues, and they're always there. The question is, my major concern is not having done something bad that would, if exposed, would ruin me. It's more because I always sort of take for granted I'm always being recorded, if not through my iPhone, whatever. It's a little crazy, but it's not so crazy with the NSA. But my idea is that my bigger concern, and it happens every now and again, is doing something involuntarily that is misperceived and that causes someone to think ill of me, and totally justifiably in their mind, but that is so unjustifiable in my mind because it was not at all what I meant. And it was sort of why, the person who told me to read the book, it was because of the Justine Sacco, the infamous tweet. I want to talk about this actually. After I'm going to do these super chats, and I'm going to talk about it. But it's the idea of doing something by accident, or a momentary lapse where someone just uses that to ruin your life and ruin your identity. This ain't Orwell. This is Kafka. I might agree with that. Orwell is an easy by comparison. Everything is the opposite of what it's called. This is total Kafka-esque disorientation. No question about that. Where you get words to mean the opposite of what they are. Like you get things to mean the opposite, and and it's not even by saying things you're saying things. By not saying things you're saying things, and it's Kafkaesque. Do it or you're guilty. Don't do it and you're guilty. And it's like I totally agree. Totally agree. By the way, thank you very much, Life of Brian. Fuel Civil Law covered this in depth. Okay, Civil Law, incidentally, is the other YouTube lawyer who does a lot of stuff about police abuse. So you might want to check out his channel, Uncivil Law, not Civil Law, Uncivil Law. Purple avatar, one of the mods. Fuel Pagan 1. An attack on the supplier to the entire globe, followed by global shutdowns, followed by global riots. Consider Floyd was killed on purpose by the cops for Antifa. Okay, I've seen these theories. This people try to make sense of situations that don't make sense, and there's nothing wrong with it. And there's, my bottom line, my fundamental philosophical principle, I have difficult. I cannot promote an idea that can never be verified one way or the other. So I may believe things, and I may believe things. Fuel, by the way, thank you very much. I may believe things knowing that I can never prove them and that they can never be disproven, which makes them what they're worth. Which is what I keep them to myself, or I believe them. I just don't share them because there's no point sharing a belief that can never be proven or disproven. It's sort of like arguing about your belief in God or your belief in ghosts or aliens. And it's also, an interpretation of facts. That people are going to see things and draw their own conclusions. They're going to people make connections in their head. And it's not a judgmental way of saying it. People see facts, they observe them, they process them the way they think is reasonable, and they come to their own conclusions. And you don't have to agree with the conclusion. I could predict that. I can tell you what some people are going to decide. I can tell you what some people are going to conclude. I can tell you how some people are going to interpret all of these sets of facts. I may radically disagree with it. I can still tell you that that's what's going to happen. And that's going to happen. So you can't blame people for coming to these conclusions. You can disagree with it, but people are entitled to make their own connections. And the only problem is if they're unverifiable or manifestly unverifiable, they're worth what they're worth, but people can still believe them. And you can disagree, but you can't fault people for putting things together the way they think makes sense to them. The only bottom line is, at the end of the day, if you consistently put things together in a way that makes sense to you but doesn't make sense objectively, that might affect the way other people perceive your opinion or your assessments. William Layerly says a banded pallet of bricks that is left off in front of a building needs a forklift to put in place. They will. I've read it. I've seen these. I've seen the reports of bricks where there are no missing bricks in the streets. Dude, this is you can get away with it in the moment, but there are intelligence agencies that don't have to be that intelligent to find this out. Bricks are made places. Forms of bricks. You get microchips, out of exploded devices, and you find the company in China that made the microchip, and you find out who they sold that microchip to and what batch, and you find the company in North America that bought. I'm a lawyer. This is the investigative process that you go through. You can get away with it for a week. You can't get away with it for much longer, but people don't seem to appreciate that. And then they just hope they can disappear into anonymity, or the mayhem is just too much for intelligence agencies to deal with, but probably not. Oh man, I tried to watch Legal and it was cringe AF. I know what that stands for. What do you get? They dogpile on you. What do you do when you get? What do you do when they dogpile on you? So, okay, well, we're going to get into the John Ron. We're going to get into that book in a bit. Okay, what do we got here? Caleb Crow says, I don't follow Scott Adams, but perhaps I should follow him. I don't agree with everything he says. I don't agree with the way he says a lot of things. Doesn't mean you're not going to learn from somebody. And you can learn from somebody because you disagree with them. I learned from Candace Owens. You get a different perspective from someone with a different life experience. You don't have to agree with it. I follow David Pakman on Twitter. Probably not because I agree with a lot of stuff he says, but I want to understand what people I don't agree with say, why they say it, and where they're coming from. So I don't agree with everything Scott Adams says, but he's still smart. You can't disagree. You cannot call him stupid. You can call him wrong. You can say you disagree with him, but you cannot call him stupid. Sorry, I think I may have missed super chats. Xa M. Mountain Hood says, personal opinion, our societal problems are more tribalism than racism. Culture clashes. Race is just one easily identifiable way of designating a group. There's no question. It's tribalism. And the tribalism itself, subdivides like a fractal. It's like, okay, you have your race. Even within your races, you have subdivisions. Even within your religions, you have your subdivisions. You have your religions, and then you have sects within the religions who fight with each other. It's an endless, what was the word I just used? Not fractal. Maybe it was a fractal, but it's endless fractal division. And just the media picks on the easiest one for people to understand that they can just push out there and make their bucks. You know who's making a lot of money with all of this shit that's going on? Media making record bucks, except for Rachel Maddow, MSNBC. Her ratings are still sliding. Karma is one heck of a thing, but everyone else you're making tons of money. It's good for media. SSG says the police killed Tony Timpa in the same way. It took 3 years to get the footage. They were shown jokingly, openly about his mental illness and his death, but they don't acknowledge that police brutality. There, for anybody who's following it, it's for anyone who's been following the internet for a little while. We know that police brutality knows no bounds. It knows no race. It knows no religion. Police brutality is police brutality, and it affects everybody. The question is going to be, are there statistics that show X, Y, and Z? Are there going to be counter statistics to explain that away? The bottom line is everyone is affected by police brutality, from Daniel Shaver to George Floyd to, I can't remember the name right now, but it's not a white black thing. It's everybody. And even in George Floyd, 2 of the 4 cops were not white. One was black, one was Asian. It's like, it's so much more complex, and also in a way so much more simple. Police brutality is police brutality and affects everybody. And that's it. But even that is controversial because of the way people want to frame certain tragedies to process them. And I can understand it. It's just, it is, to quote Nate Brody, it is what it is, but it's not it's oversimplified. It's oversimplified for divisive purposes by a media that makes millions by doing it. Call me a cynic, and I might be turning into one. I told Amazing Lucas in one of our streams, don't get angry and don't turn into a cynic. Maybe turn into a realist, but keep smiling when you do it. DA says Floyd resisted over 5 minutes, said, I ain't going. DA says that all on body cam. DA has uphill case. Well, okay, good. I don't care if he said that, actually. Controversial thought. I don't care if he said that. I don't care if he said I ain't going. When his arms are behind his back and he's on his stomach, he can say whatever he wants. He's not going anywhere, and he's in a position that makes him absolutely vulnerable to the police custody that he's in, period. So, hey, maybe he said that for 5 minutes. I ain't going. Okay, good. Where was he going, incidentally? But that's a separate issue. But I don't even care. I'll take for granted. Let's just assume that's true. I don't care. Doesn't change anything in my mind. Dude's on his back, on his stomach, with his hands cuffed behind his back, in police custody. They're responsible for him, and they should be held responsible for him. What do we got here? All of this has happened before and will happen again. Viva Battlestar Galactica. In one variation or another. It's... What is this fake lawyers? Is he talking about me? Say his name, Tony Timpa. I'm gonna Google it because I'm not actually sure. Hold on a second. Screenshot that. I didn't just put myself on mute, did I? So let me see here. So hold on a second. We got I just wrote my Quebec bar exam, hopefully passed. Do you recommend doing a stage in a big firm or a small firm as a start? Look, if you have an option of doing your stage in a big firm, don't look a gift horse in the mouth to smell its breath. Do it at a big firm. You may not like the experience. They will train you. You will always have that notch in your belt. You will always have that street cred. I did my stage at a big firm. People are going to immediately think you know what you're doing, even if you don't, and you probably won't. Go with the big firm first, get the training there, and you can go to a smaller firm afterwards, but it's much more difficult to go the other way around. It's my meaningless advice. Rebricks, Berkshire Hathaway, Gates step down, Warren Buffett, half owned by the Pricksters. Okay, well, we'll see where that goes. I mean, we'll see. I want to see if that person was... Okay, hold on. Okay. Courtney Gray says, Viva, I was literally going to send you my spare copy. I found out about him at a TED Talk on his book, The Psychopath Test. He also did something on conspiracy theories. Yeah, the book's amazing. The book's amazing, and it tapped into something of a primordial issue of mine, which is to even want to forgive the people who don't deserve forgiveness. That's call it a mental disorder, and I'm not saying that in a tongue-in-cheek way. I have an issue where I feel bad for even the people who may not deserve forgiveness. But when it comes to things like lying in an article that you wrote, I'm thinking of Jonah Lehrer, who gets shamed, has his life ruined. When it comes to people who have committed suicide because of the public shamings, yeah, I tend to think that maybe our overreaction, our overzealous reaction actually has less to do with the subject and more to do with feigning our own moral superiority over the people we purport to judge. Wonder how many of these politicians and activists will attend David Dorn's funeral. Well, there will be activist journal, and I call them activist journalists. Hopefully there will be journalists to raise that issue because it's a legitimate one. I mean, it's a depressing thought, actually. I mean, it's almost like, all victims are equal, but some victims are more equal than others, type thing. It's in the David Dorn is terrible, but it's terrible. There's no but. What do you do? Does the autopsy saying he died of a heart attack hurt the murder charge, strictly speaking, in court? My understanding, yes, it does. Because if you have an expert that comes in and says he died of a heart attack and not as a result of the knee to the head from Chauvin, you have one expert that casts a reasonable doubt, and you're going to court on second-degree murder charges. All you need is a reasonable doubt to acquit. And having an expert, presumably someone with an education, not some Dr. Nick Riviera expert, having an expert say he didn't die, it was a totally spontaneous thing, bad timing, can cast a reasonable doubt in at least, one jury member. It will hurt the murder case. It'll hurt the prosecution. The ultimate irony is in, I'm talking to people now and who don't believe the autopsy. And I was like, yeah, you probably have to be very naive to believe the autopsy. The irony is that these are the same people who are calling other people conspiracy theorists for not believing the other infamous autopsy, which confirmed suicide and not murder. It's a funny thing. This illustrates the issue of corruption. Is conspiracy theory right up until it comes knocking on your door. So yeah, the autopsy, from what I've had discussions with people, is going to have an impact. And especially, creates a reasonable doubt. Viva Frei, we're talking full-on Home Depot style pallets of bricks delivered to the front. Hey, the one good thing about CCTV, they're gonna find these people. This stuff doesn't happen. I say that, but meanwhile, then thinking of the infamous situation when CCTV footage goes missing or gets damaged and nobody knows where it is. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna blast through these super chats because a lot of them, I think I'm missing some. According to the stats, 228 were killed by cops in the U.S. as of March. 30 were black. There is more gang shootings. Okay, the gang shooting comparison is a red herring. Don't do it. It's a bad argument. Go to the stats. I looked at the stats myself. I didn't get to 2020 yet because they were not up to speed. Previous years, the stats are there. You can Google them, and it seems like the stats are the stats. Interpret them the way you want, but it's not. You'd be surprised if you haven't already looked at them. But comparing it to the shootings, these are two separate issues, and I'm aligned with the amazing Lucas on this. You have your time and you have your place for street violence and gang violence. It's not when an innocent person has been murdered, killed by police officers, that you say, well, what about Chicago? Chicago's going to be there. It's been there for months. It's been there for years, and it'll be there for years. It has to be dealt with, but not as a way of distracting from the current issue. If anybody doesn't know the amazing Lucas, watch him. I don't always agree with him, but I appreciate his perspective. Joseph Noonan, I may have missed it if it was discussed earlier. What do you think qualified immunity? Do you think it can be removed? Didn't discuss it yet. This is a subject for another vlog. My feeling is qualified immunity being like these police officers, government officials benefit from some form of immunity for acts done in the context of their employment. My theory has been they should not get immunity. They should actually be held to a higher standard. I know that might deter people from engaging in the civic duty, but if you're not confident in your own discretion, don't do it. You should not get immunity because you're not confident in your own ability to deal with adverse situations. I am sad that people are dying due to people dying. Shining Blade. Okay. I too share. I am sad. I'm trying not to make a joke because you can't make jokes about things that are not funny, but yeah, look, there's tragedies. But don't distract from the real tragedies. There's a real tragedy here. And David Dorn is another real tragedy here. Chicago violence is another real tragedy here. But these things about real tragedies is it's not a sum zero game. One doesn't detract from the other. And so a whataboutism about saying, okay, well, there's other worse stuff going on. Yeah, that's good. And if your excuse for not doing anything is that something worse is going on, you'll never do anything. So let's start by doing something about that which is at the forefront. SSG Lester says, I agree. Give a fuck me. Okay. I agree. However, the media causes major problems by making police brutality exclusively a racial issue. I tend to agree with that because it also it ignores certain victims. And it mischaracterizes the issue. I don't know, you know, people will accuse me of whatever they want but for this belief. I think you also mischaracterize the police brutality issue. They're not letting white people and Latinos and Asians get off scot, just you guys go, we're going to pick on one race. Police brutality affects all races. It affects all people, and it affects all, men and women, regardless of your age. And so I think, to pretend not to pretend, but rather to focus it as one issue and then ignore the others. A bunch of other ones who did a bunch of other bad stuff are like, oh, thanks. Now I get to get away with what I did to all these other people, because that's not where the focus is right now. Police brutality is an issue. They require more training, they require more tolerance, and they require more community building. And community building in the sense that people should trust cops and cops should trust people, except when they shouldn't. What we're doing right now is undoing both of those foundations of civil society. Let's turn off media. We might have a chance to heal. I am so tempted to never go back to Twitter because it doesn't make me happy. Murgle, thank you. It makes me actually unhappy to go there. And I try to go there and not add to the unhappiness and try to add to some insight, but I don't even know I don't know what insight I don't think I'm saying anything that's insightful. I don't want to feel pressure to be insightful. The pressure to be insightful leads to the pressure to be antagonizing. So Zero Surface says, you missed my chat. Sorry about that. But I want to know what your thoughts are on it. I feel like giving in to the rioters sends the message terrorism works. That scares me. I don't think anybody's going to tolerate that. I do think there's a vocal minority on social media and in the media that tolerates the riots and the violence. People tolerate the protests. People don't tolerate the riots and the violence. And I really do think there's a mass awakening to the general population that black and white alike are not putting up with the violence. The protests are one thing, but I've been watching tons of videos, an old lady about her, talking about her pizza shop that's burned down, an old black lady, and saying like, this is not progress. You just put me out of a job. I've been here for 24 hours cleaning this place up because of what you did. Who are you helping? You're tearing down our communities where you live, and you just killed 12 jobs which lived here. I've been watching all of this, so I think the people are understanding the violence is not. Nobody tolerates the violence, and ultimately I don't. I think the violence is coordinated by outside sources who are trying to exploit of the situation. So hopefully we can move on from that. I don't think the media does what it does to make its money, and they have no shame. And that's a very big problem. They have no shame and they have no honor and they have no standards. Sorry, I have no mercy and I have no forgiveness for the media. They make money off of this. They're profiteers, and they create the divisiveness, they promote the division, they create the strife, and then they sit there and report on it. Okay. Patrick Troy says, do you think this will affect white-black dating on Tinder? I don't, dude. I'm lucky. I've been out of the dating market for 21 years. Sweet Jeez Louise, am I old? And I also started dating young. I've been with my wife since I was 19, she was 17. Now I hear all the jokes on the internet. In 1917 we met and we dated for 8 years before getting married. How difficult do you think it will be for Floyd's killers to get a fair trial? That's a good question. Spoliation of the jury pool. Spoliation is not the word. Poisoning or tainting the jury pool. I don't know, man. I don't know. Where are they going to go for a fair trial? I don't know, and I don't even know. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that. I'll ask Barnes that. That's a good question. I'm going to screenshot that this way. Oh, I'm going to screenshot it this way. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. I don't know how they're ever going to get a fair trial. Edward McKay. And then the other question is like, what's a fair trial? Everyone's seen that video. Okay. me see here. Let me see here. Bung, 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 bang, bing, bang, bong. We got, I'm going to go all the way up and just see what I missed. You didn't read charging documents. How can you comment? Oh, I'm going to read the chart. Someone sent it to me today. How can I comment? I saw the video. I didn't read the charging documents. It doesn't mean I can't comment on what I saw with my own eyes. I'll read the charging documents. Someone sent it to me today, and it might be, I might do a video on it if there's anything that I can clarify or elucidate. But saying that I haven't seen everything, so I can't say anything is sort of the cheap way out of saying I can't have an opinion. My opinion, I will admit, I formed my opinion based on what I've seen. And what I've seen, I think, is enough for me to formulate my opinion. And that's even engaging in the exercise that I explained in one of my previous videos about adding whatever fact, adding the most negative fact possible that would change my opinion on what I just saw. Is this Ferguson effect real? It's the Ferguson effect. I'm going to have to Google that because I don't know what that is. Anyways, Mike Waltz, thank you. Lucrat Everyman says, the real tragedy is the idea of innocence until proven guilty be smashed beyond recognition. Well, there's at some point you say, okay, there's that's the criminal standard. At another point, you see enough civilly where I've been saying it about OJ, but now that Barnes says he thinks OJ was innocent, I have to double check everything I've ever thought. I don't need a guilty condemnation to justify in my soul the conclusion that I've already come to. And I certainly would not be able to sit on that jury pool, probably. But there's guilty until proven, there's innocent until proven guilty in a criminal sense. But, there's also, they may never be proven guilty. I'm not going to let someone babysit, or, I'm trying to think of I'm not going to let Michael Vick walk my dog, even if he was found innocent in a court of law type thing. So we're allowed to come to our own conclusions. It's just a question of what we do with our own conclusions. But I'm allowed to come to mine, even if they don't coincide or they would not be upholdable in a criminal court of law. The situation like James King's shows that if they survive the police brutality, they will charge you, get you to take a deal, and shut up. They charged King, I believe, with 6 felonies to get him to take the deal, and he refused. Okay, I don't know enough about it to have an opinion, but uncivil loss is a tool with mod powers. Okay, here. Zozo says the media constantly failing to differentiate between protesters and rioters, looters is actually damaging the cause they claim to support. There's no question about that, at least as far as my observation of people who are watching this. It won't hurt their cause with the media because the media doesn't care. But they say things but there's a reason why nobody trusts the media. There's a reason. So it damages the cause. I agree with that, and it damages the media's cause. And there's a reason why I don't know what the stats are, but record low faith in media, if any. There's a reason for that. It's good. I thought you analyzed without emotion. Joel Rowley, thank you very much for the comment and the super chat. It's good. I thought you analyzed without emotion. I have emotion, but I try to analyze without emotion because emotion doesn't do anything except for color the way you analyze. Okay, so we did that. Media, we did this. Tainted jury pool. I mean, how do they do it? I mean, they're going to ask for a trial by jury, I presume. I met in 1917. We met in 1999, in a different millennia. Okay, Patrick Troy says, I used to have a black belt in Kung Fu. If I get the Kung Flu, does that mean I will get Bruce Lee stripper powers? Can I get a Masharonosaurus? You have a beautiful Akita by the looks of it in that avatar. That's either an Akita. No, that's an Akita. I'm sticking with Akita. Patrick Troy, don't do another super chat, but let me know if that's an Akita. Statute of limitations. Viva Frei. Well, okay. I know what he's thinking about. Let me just go ahead and skip past that and change the subject slightly. Oh, look at this. Murgo Takum. Your rant on the media reminds me of a guy number 45. This is the amazing thing. Like, I don't know if I take this as an insult, a compliment, a judgment, an affirmation, a statement, a joke, or sarcasm. This is the beauty of the internet. Is you read a comment like this, how do I take it? And I've been reading tweets. I don't know how to take the tweets anymore. My initial reaction is to take everything immediately as a threat. And then I say, okay, I know that's in my head. Got to back up one step and say, okay, it's not, typically speaking, it's not a threat. Is it a joke? Is it sarcasm? Is it humor? Is it seriousness? Is it truthfulness? Thank you. Either way, however you meant this, Murgle, thank you very much. 45 is Trump. So that at least I know we're talking about that. I'll bet no murder conviction, maybe negligent homicide. Well, so they're not being charged with first degree. So they're being charged with second degree. So it will definitely not be a murder. It will be second degree murder, manslaughter. It's not going to be first degree murder. So I have to see exactly what the charge would be, even if they get charged on that for which they are even if they get convicted on that for which they are charged. Let me crack my back here. Oh my God. The Stanford prison study and Dr. Stanley Milgram's experiment on authority demonstrates human behavior under certain circumstances. More police brutality is inevitable. We need serious police reform. Madame Moncook. Yeah. So interesting thing about the Stanford prison experiment. We've all seen, if nobody's seen the movie called The Experiment, a German movie, all based on the Stanford project, it's interesting. In John Ronson's book, So You've Been Publicly Shamed, he talks about it. And, the whole second side of that is, one side is, these people go mad, they go crazy with power, playing the roles. The flip side is some of the people apparently in the experiment said, of course, we were all doing it as a game because, we're hired to do this experiment. We know what the people who hired us want us to do. So we start doing it as a joke, or we start doing it as almost as a meme. But then, then the question is, does it make a difference at some point why they're doing it? Are they doing it to please the authority, or are they doing it because they know that that's what this simulated situation demands of them or expects of them? Maybe it makes no difference, but it's an interesting thing, the Stanford experiments. And the Milgram experiment, I think, is when they were shocking people who thought that they were actually shocking people with up to lethal doses, and they were doing it because someone in a white lab coat was telling them to do it. I like to think I wouldn't do it. I think I'm fairly certain I know myself I wouldn't do it. I like to think in George Floyd that I would have, tackled the policeman, but I think I wouldn't have, because I would have been fairly certain that if I did that at that point in time, I would have been shot. I would have tried to pull out the lawyer, not. I listened to what the people, the bystanders were saying. Like, well, there was one guy saying, "Bro," using the word "bro" with the cops, and trying to be familiar and trying to be friendly and trying to be collegial. What's the word? It was the bystander's method of pleading to the police officer, "Bro, we're friends. Stop doing it. I'm asking you as a friend." I like to think I would have pulled out the legal side and said, "I'm recording this and live streaming this right now, and this will be evidence in your murder trial if you don't get off his neck right now." I like to think that I would have been able to do that. I'm not sure I would have been able to. So it's nice to have the hindsight of being able to reflect as to what your reaction would have been in a circumstance where, at the time of, Lord knows if you would have been able to formulate a full sentence. But listening to the bystanders, they were pleading with the officers as opposed to authoritatively demanding of the officers. And anyhow, what's done cannot be undone, and that's the tragedy of life. The Zero Officer says, sad part is, while I agree about the news, I have friends that I thought were calm, going on and on about burning everything down, and this is in Vancouver. People are going nuts and supporting the fire. People talk. It's very easy for people to talk like that on social media. It's very easy for people to talk like that, in private company. Mike Vick. Oh, Mike. But, people talk a big game, and then, those two lawyers who threw the cocktails are going to realize for the rest of their lives, they're going to, they've dug a hole that they're going to have to dig themselves out of if they can. It's going to take a long time, but it's all fun and games talking among friends. Let's burn it all down. Let's go throw bricks. You get arrested, and then you realize that you have ruined your life for a moment of inconsequential destruction. Martin C. Let's see. Very important video on YouTube. Please go watch and learn. 50 years ago, American police debated George Floyd's situation on national TV. I'm going to go screenshot this because I'm curious. Thank you. Let's see what it says here. It says, James F. He says, I swear I won't be saying nice things to the media folk I know locally. Vincent Rample says, God bless you on 21 years of marriage. No, not 21 years of marriage. 13 years of marriage. 8 years of dating. I could have probably done that just by going the other way around. 13 years of marriage. 3 kids. We're doing good. Touch wood, poo-poo. Okay, so, and by the way, thank you. We got, I think Barnes is just right of center. I don't know. I don't care what Barnes is. I mean, I disagree with Barnes on certain things. Ahmaud Arbery is one of the things I disagree with him on, but I understand exactly what he's saying. I understand why he's saying it. He's not irrational or illogical for saying it. It's just he understands the law, and then he understands how he applies the law to his observations. I disagree with him on some things, but I learn from him on everything. And if that's, you can't ask for more than that. Okay, that's what I just did here. Well, okay, I just I may have missed some super chats, and I do apologize because I saw a son of a bee sting. I saw a lot of stuff disappear. Second degree is murder without premeditation, Leathery 420. Yeah, and I don't know if I don't know if it's life potential, but it's 25 years. I mean, it's a serious thing. Second degree plus aiding and abetting. Yeah, the other officers who were sitting there pushing the crowd away, threatening them. Everyone, I missed your super chats, and I'm sorry. Okay, you know what? So this is a good time. So you've been publicly shamed. Who the heck? 1 hour, 10 minutes. Who knows start that again. Who knows the story of Justine Sacco? I mean, I feel bad because I don't want to bring her name back up for what she did in 2015. I don't the bottom line is the internet never forgets, and the internet will never forget. But her story is so tragic and then also uplifting at the same same time. And this was the reason why someone told me to read the book. So you've been publicly shamed. Barnes is in my head about OJ. We're gonna get there. Justine Sacco, who doesn't know? Put Y's in there and let's just see. Okay. Justine Sacco worked at a PR firm, was getting on a plane to go to South Africa for a business trip or something. Right before leaving, it's the story, if it were in a movie, would be implausible. Everyone would say this is a joke. This is beyond it's beyond plausibility. She's getting on a plane to go to South Africa. She makes a tweet. If anybody doesn't know the tweet, she says, "I'm going to South Africa. Hope I don't get HIV. JK, I'm white." That was the tweet. Hit send, gets on a plane for 11 hours, unconnected. She has 120 followers on Twitter. The tweet gets retweeted by someone at Gawker who has 15,000 whatever on Twitter and goes viral. But it goes viral in the way of in a cartoon on The Simpsons when Bart Simpson's "I didn't do it" goes viral. He's like, "That's stupid. That doesn't happen in real life. I didn't do it." And then you got the "I didn't do it" dancers. Within her 11-hour flight, the tweet went viral. Everyone started calling for her to get fired. She got fired on Twitter. The entire world on Twitter had witnessed her demise while she's sitting in an airplane 30,000 feet above the ground eating peanuts and has no idea what's going on. To say it's nightmarish, it's nightmarish. Then hashtag "has Justine landed yet" starts trending because everyone's like, "Oh, we know that her life is over," and I know that her life is not over because she managed to come back. Her life is destroyed. She doesn't even know it yet. Oh, I think I could win. She doesn't even know that her life that this has happened yet, and she's hashtag "has Justine landed yet" starts trending because people are like, "I want to see her when she lands." And then people track her flight. They track when it's going to land. There's an ongoing thing on Twitter. People are following her. They're at bars saying "I want to go to bed, but we got to see what happens when Justine lands." There's a countdown timer to when her plane lands. Someone says she's landing in South Africa. Surely someone's got to get to the airport and snap a shot of her. Someone gets to the airport and snaps a shot of Justine as she's landed when her phone starts going off and she realizes what's happened. She got fired. She, I guess, had a rough year for what a tweet that was incidentally not supposed to be racist, but was rather supposed to be self-deprecating, and it just didn't translate well on Twitter. And Twitter doesn't approve of, that which allows people to make themselves look holier than the person that they're judging. So that story of Justine Sacco was mind-blowing. And the book, John Ronson's book, explores some very famous public shamings, the history of public shaming. Some, judges who employed public shaming as opposed to harsh incarceration punishments. And it's just a fascinating look at the why, the repercussions, it was just mind blowing. And, the people who commit suicide because it's just too much. When the Ashley Madison leak occurred, dozens of people ended up committing suicide of the 3.5 million people whose identities were disclosed. And it explores the cases of some people who bounced back, and Justine Sacco was one of them. The Formula One racer was another one. But it's just a fascinating book, but ultimately illustrates that the social media mob that comes down on someone. The analogy I had when reading John Ronson's book is that it's like the charges in the clouds, and they're just it's building up, and it just takes one one lightning rod, one spark on the ground for all of that pent up rage to come down all on that one person. And same thing, what happened with Justine, based in racism and accusations of racism. It's, decades of racism, systemic racism, whatever you have. And it's all coming down on that one person's head. All of these these clouds that were charged negative ions, they just get their one positive charge on the ground and bam, the entire weight of the world on that one person. And the same thing with Amy Cooper in the park, who admittedly, said, admittedly, you can't deny that racialized the situation, but this one lady in New York and all of the world's weight of racism and systemic racism and prejudice comes, that's the person now that bolt of lightning comes down on. And social media does it without thinking twice. That if any one of us were caught at our worst moments, taken in abstractum, what that might look like to anyone else, and people just they lose sight of that for that endorphin rush they get for getting a retweet and just enjoying the pile-on and the affirmation from their social media colleagues. Okay, thoughts on what the political map will be by the end of 2021. I always used to say I was center-left. Now I will say it's center-right. I cannot understand the current left. I'm predicting this. Don't accuse me of bias, by the way, people, because I get accused of being too far left by the right. I get accused of being too far right by the left, and I get accused of being a milk toast fence sitter by both sides. I talk to a lot of people. I think it's going to be a swing to the right. I see it in the younger generation. Even their parents don't know that the kids are growing up more conservative than the parents. That's my prediction, but I was wrong on the Quebec prediction for the elections. Although I wasn't technically wrong, I allocated the vote to one party over the other, but I was sort of on the aggregate correct as to where there was going to be a shift in the aggregate vote, but I picked the wrong party to appropriate that vote. But I think it's going to be a shift to the right because I think a lot of people are getting fed up looking at this. I think a lot of lefties, a lot of anti-2As are going to start appreciating the value of Second Amendments when the police can't get there. A lot of people now are looking at people who they would not otherwise, deem to be pro Second Amendments, standing on rooftops defending their businesses. A lot of people are going to have radically different views about the Second Amendment in the States. How much alcohol do I drink? What a bizarre question. How much alcohol do I drink, or do I drink alcohol? I like to have a martini in the evening. Martini is an excuse to have, like a very fancy glass filled with gin. No, I'm not. I have no problem. I have no judgment about alcohol. I think it's in everything in moderation. Bosbandaloo, it's the modern day lynching of horrific crowds. It is mob pile-ons, but people don't regard it as real life. Sorry, hold on. I believe. Okay, no, that was the bishop. $22, oddly enough, is just enough to buy a bottle of gin. It is. People don't appreciate that it's real people. Hate them or love them, whether or not they deserve it or don't. People don't appreciate that they are real people and that people are fundamentally imperfect. And the punishment has to fit the crime in the criminal courts, but it doesn't work that way in the social media courts. And people and on social media, you have to oversimplify everything into black and white, into good versus evil. If you're not with us, you're against us. If you don't post this hashtag, you're against us. It's like the oversimplification that undermines the complexity of humans and that undermines the fragility of humans. People, I'm relatively callous in terms of the nonsense that I read in terms of nasty comments, but I think people write them and don't appreciate that they're talking to a real human. Okay, I missed some super chats and I apologize, by the way, guys. I'm trying to get also some of the non-super chats. Let's see what we got here. Okay. You're a French toast fence sitter. Well, let's see. French toast. Okay, so hold on. I see some stuff here. Okay, what do we got? A new member. We got the new member. Okay, French toast fence sitter. I saw that. Okay, we got. Hold on. Here we go. Okay, Mr. Robot. This is a test run. Wait until October 15th. I'm not sure what that means, but B is Screecher, like Screech from Saved by the Bell or something else. Or you will be. And you will be wrong on the Floyd officers. Hold on. What was my prediction on the Floyd officers? They're going to get convicted of something. If you think I'm wrong on that, they will get convicted on something. And I don't know about the other ones. Chauvin for sure. I don't know about the other cops. the felony. What was it? The felony charges participating in a felonious act. I don't know about the other ones, but Chauvin is going to get convicted of something. And I don't want to say he has to, as though like it's a foregone conclusion. If he doesn't, that it justifies more uproar. He's going to get convicted on something because I saw the video and I know what I think. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Just go on. Will you brave another late night with Nick Riccietta? He practices in Minnesota. Man, if he would just up it for 1 hour earlier, I could probably be game to do it. How much Bitcoin do you smoke, or do you? I smoke no Bitcoins, and I also do not do marijuana. If that's what you meant by smoking Bitcoins. How much Bitcoin do you smoke? I don't own any Bitcoin. I think I missed the Bitcoin train. I was on the internet when Bitcoin was like, I don't know, hundreds of dollars a coin. I feel like I missed the train on that one. You drink on the air. No, I don't. It's water. That was actually my brother-in-law's maple whiskey at La Chaufferie, which I don't get a cut and I don't get a percentage. It's in Granby, Quebec. Wonderful. They make good gin. Their maple whiskey is a little sweet for my taste, but what about an appletini? Nah, I don't like mixing things. Just an olive, a nice olive. VF's unit vector is a bottle of gin. So yeah. Okay. So that was the book. Read it if you haven't read it. It's beautiful and it will give insight. I just saw someone, Viva, disagree. Viva, there needs to be more people like you being able to disagree and continue to listen, knowing that can be wrong. I don't only want to pull up comments that are flattering and that make me feel good. I want to pull up the ones that make me feel uncomfortable and dirty and stupid. So thank you very much, by the way, Alejandro. But there was one that said, okay, I think I missed it. Oh, wait. I missed this. RJ Brown, thank you very much. Okay, let's see. I missed it. What's the October 15th reference? I don't know what was meant by that either. Okay, now before I lose this, what do we have here? Judge Sullivan represents a rot in our system. Oh yeah, no, I didn't mention it in the book, in my vlog, because I didn't want to get into that. Sullivan's lawyer is representing Hillary Clinton's aide there. I forget her name. It's an incestuous pool. There's nothing you can do about it. Test run just until, okay, so I'm not sure what we mean by the October 15th. Okay, so let's see. We got, son of a bee sting. Okay, Sunny Fennel says, I think there's one thing all of us can agree on, and that's to shut down your Twitter account. Shut mine a year ago, and like a bad itch, I keep wanting to get it back on, but for the good of humanity, leave Twitter. Twitter has some good things, and it just has some fundamentally bad things. And speaking of itch, you remind me my shingles has left nerve damage on my torso, which is very unpleasant. Why do I ignore common law? I don't ignore common law. I'm from Quebec. We have civil law. I don't ignore it. Okay, so I think I may have missed some super chats here. Let me see here. David Kant says, your feeling about mail-in ballots. Not for nothing. If you can walk in a protest, you can walk in voting areas. The logic for mail-in ballots doesn't make sense to me. But then I come from a place where I have to show photo ID to vote in municipal elections. So the idea of not requiring voter ID is also somewhat foreign to me. So I can't bring up your super chat, David Kant, but thank you very much. No, the justification doesn't make sense. Social distancing at the ballots, run them for 4 days if you have to. I don't know if there's a constitutional reason why you can't run the elections for more than 1 day. Mail-in ballots is for those who need it, but the justification doesn't make sense to me, and which makes me suspect as to the motivation. We smoke Bitcoins. Okay, so I got that. Hold on. RCMP profiler just revealed that the Nova Scotia killer was an injustice collector. I don't know what that means. I thought that was about the Tim Hortons. I thought that was about the Tim Hortons vlog a little while back. Okay, what do we got here? Okay, I think there is one thing all of us can agree on, and that's shut down the Twitter accounts. We can do that. Okay, what else do we want to talk about? An hour and 23. Should probably, what time is it? 11 o'clock. What was the other thing I wanted to talk about? Do we talk about Jake Paul? I'm going to do I think the vlog tomorrow is going to be on Jake Paul, and it might recycle some of the stuff we're talking about today. Viva Frei, mail-in ballot equals super logical if you want to cheat. Well, I just want to know the rationale. What's the justification? I want to understand the justification for mail-in ballots. If it has to do with the pandemic, you can socially distance at the ballot box in the exact same way you can socially distance at the grocery store. If you're letting millions of people protest in the streets, kind of undermines the basis for mail-in ballot. And then to insist on it stubbornly makes me suspicious. Viva Frei, it's hard to disagree with you when you're being so gosh darn reasonable. Did you have debate or civics classes while you were in grade school? I was not reasonable in grade school. I was a pain in the ass, and I was probably a bad kid. I went to 3 high schools in 5 years. Involuntarily, I should say. So, are we not at 1,000 likes yet? Get to 1,000 likes! So, so thank you, by the way, for the... It's flattering. It's flattering. Yeah. Best DJ asks, find out who benefits and follow the money. Lennon, it's how we solve all crimes. Why these people are from the liberal arts and not from small business or poor working. They're not even from STEM. Just follow the money. Well, all roads lead to Rome. Now, there's no question. It doesn't. The voter. I know the vote. I understand the voter ID argument. It is that some people have difficulty getting IDs because they don't have a fixed domicile. If that's the issue, like my labor law professor in University of Laval said, you do not make policy of the exceptions. You make policy for the exceptions. So if there are people who don't have a domicile that can't get photo ID, you address that specific issue. For the rest, get photo ID, get an ID, get a voting ID. It doesn't have to be hard to get. But everyone should get one. I have to have an ID to drive. I have to have in Quebec, Canada, we have to have an ID to vote. Take for granted. I don't know what countries don't have voter ID laws. So I understand the argument. I just disagree with it. So where do you go from there? So, when it comes to mail-in voting, what's the rationale? Is it because of the fear of the virus? Because I think by allowing tens of thousands of people to protest in close proximity and do what they're doing, that kind of undermines the argument. And I say that non-judgmentally, just purely logically. How is protesting blocking a highway on a street different from unlawfully detaining someone? So that's a question. I did not do criminal law. Someone was asking me, like, when is the person who runs someone over justified in doing it? We had a case like this in Quebec where I know what I felt at the time. It was a cab driver who had 4 people get out of his car, didn't pay the fare, started stomping on the car, not smashing, but hitting the windows, jumping on the car. And this guy drove off in a panic, ran one of them over, and it led to an uproar in Quebec because people, the taxi driver got arrested. He went to court. The judge said to the prosecuting attorneys, "Did you watch the video of this?" Because it was all over the internet, and they hadn't. And they said, "Like, dude, watch it and then come back here to tell me what charges you're pressing, and don't come here and start pushing for charges when you haven't seen the video," because the guy was clearly scared. And at what point is it a justifiable reaction, especially in a protest where you end up in a situation involuntarily where you're surrounded by people who are not, you cannot rely on them to be reasonable with you. But then the flip side is, it's always two sides to a story where who knows if the car drove into the crowd on purpose and then whatever. But so I don't know the answer to that question, but it is circumstantial, and I'm from my understanding, the criteria is the reasonable apprehension of a reasonable person in similar circumstances, which means nothing. It means like determined on the spot. Robert Rogers. At this point, I feel that at this point, all the protesters are complicit in the riots. Even the peaceful protesters know they are being used as cover for the violence. They are accessories to the crimes committed by the looters. Well, okay, if you feel that way, but what's your flip? What's your suggestion that now, even if they know that people have hijacked the cause, that they should no longer protest and they should go home, and that sort of rewards the exact purpose of what those who want to sabotage it are doing, and that deprives the people of their rights to protest in the first place? I think there's been a fair bit of denouncing the elements that are there to cause problems and not to protest. But the flip side is, even if you're right, what the flip side is then, okay, so because of the bad apples, they no longer get to exercise their rights to protest and to peaceably assemble. I'm not sure I agree with that conclusion, even if I might think there's some truth to the premise. Let's see what we got here. Do we want to talk about Jake Paul or no? Jake Paul, man, posting stuff on the interwebs specifically so that it can be held against you in perpetuity, because you cannot take it off the internet Delete it all you want. It's there forever. Officers will walk. Now you know that your vlog. Peace out. Joel Riley, screenshotting. I'm not going to hold it against you. I'm just going to hold it to you. But then again, the thing about Scott Adams, we make predictions. We have to count all of them, not just the ones we're right or wrong on. And I have to know not to pull the lawyer talk. Officers will walk. You might be right. We're concerned with one officer in particular. So we'll see. Lynn Washington says, there are people who live full-time in vans or minivans, and they have ID. There are always ways to declare residence, even if rarely ever there. Yeah, or you can have IDs that are not based on residence. In Canada, Medicare cards. You don't have to have them. You just have to show birth certificate. Maybe some other things to show that you haven't left the country in too long. But there's ways. There's no question. There's ways. The voter ID argument, I've never been convinced by it. And I've always been suspect of the argument. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Hour and 30 minutes. G. Ray Brown. Jesus said, pull the plank out of your eye to see the speck out of someone else's eye. The people who destroy others all have planks in their lives. Jesus said, pull the plank out of your eye. I'm going to look it up. I have to make sure I understand that and appreciate the exact expression, screenshotting. And like I said, I think I said it somewhere else. You don't have to be religious to appreciate timeless advice. Matthew Chris says, I saw 2 pallets of bricks today, orchestrated. I think at some point, most people are on the same page with that. It seems pretty clear that the pallets, they're not bricks that are being pulled up from the streets, even if that was occurring in other locations. If second-degree murder fails, can they charge him again with third degree? Or is that double jeopardy? Is the AG setting it up for failure? My understanding, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, under Canadian criminal law, you can be convicted of the lesser and included crime. So trying to think of a good example. Okay. The obvious example is first degree, murder for punching someone in the face and killing them. If you fail on the murder, lesser and included could be assault. And in which case, even if you don't get convicted on murder, you can still get convicted on the lesser and included charge. I'm not sure if that's the same in the States, in Minnesota. So I would defer to Requieta on that. And maybe I'm going to ask Barnes tomorrow. So I don't think anyone's setting them up to fail. It's just a question of how aggressively you go with the charges. Okay, we saw that. Viva Frei. Quand est-ce que le Québec va se grandir un paire de couilles? I don't know what the context of that is, but just so anyone doesn't speak French, when is Quebec going to grow a pair of dodgeballs? Okay, we got water jabbers. Would a law to criminalize excessive force be a possible solution to some of the problems we have with an officer conduct? I don't know. How would you enforce that? I mean, the excessive force, I think you're creating a law to address, there's already laws against excessive force. There's already laws to hold them responsible under certain circumstances. It's just a question of applying it to those circumstances. I just think the idea of immunity is the issue. I don't think I would be a proponent of lifting immunity. They should not get extra protections for what they do. They should be held to a higher standard for what they do. And if that's too much of a deterrent, don't go into that line of practice. Is my ignorant opinion. Best DJF, can you explain why libards love immigrants so much? Women don't like poor immigrants, and we pretend it's all about love. We should just outsource all our jobs. Thank you. That is what I would refer to as an argumentative question that is loaded with. That is not a question seeking an answer. That is a statement of a question. It expresses an opinion. I don't necessarily agree with the opinion. I would just say people prioritize their own priorities in the way they think is appropriate. And what's the expression that when you're young, if you have a heart, you're a liberal, and if you're an adult and you have a brain, you become conservative. There's some expression about that, but people are idealistic, and then. The Amy Winehouse documentary, life can teach you a lot of lessons if you live long enough. And I think people have a lot of idealistic principles, and then you just see that, universal basic income sounds good and it might be a good idea and it might even be plausible. But then the flip side is, and we're seeing it in Canada now, people don't want to go back to work because they're making $2,000 a month not working. And even if it's not more than what they were working, it's less for doing nothing versus marginally more for doing work. you see, you get past the idealistic principles, and then you see how they pan out in real life, and it's not always ideal. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Oh man. Okay. Let's just see. Okay, and then I think we're gonna wind this up. Yeah, 11 o'clock. Let's wind this up sooner than later. Okay, I saw this here. Hold on. Sorry. Okay, so we saw that. Then I saw your legal opinion of practical, effective legal reform. Let's say police for I don't know. I think people need to be held responsible for their conduct. Make them take out private insurance. Don't give them immunity. And incidentally, settlements should not be paid with tax dollars. The police force paying settlements for their misconduct with taxpayer dollars. That's great. That's like the police giving the mailman a ticket and then the mailman flipping, paying the ticket from government funds. It's not a deterrent on anybody. So, Nick Opedisano. I used to think my favorite thing out of Quebec was Patrick Roy, a UFC fighter. Oh no, is that what I'm thinking? That's the goaltender. I'm thinking of Patrick Cote, who's the UFC fighter. Patrick Roy was our number 33 goaltender. Then Sortilège came out, which is a very strong beer, delicious. Now we have Viva Frei, great content, and please keep it up. Nick, thank you very much. Patrick Roy, greatest of all time. Sorry, but Patrick Cote was one of the most up-and-coming, promising UFC fighters out of Quebec after GSP. I still love him. He's amazing. Thank you very much, by the way. Okay, what do we got here? We got Matthew Christ. Nice to see you, Matthew. We have a right to peacefully assemble, no right to block streets, then hit cars who don't stop. That's criminal. I don't think you're going to get many people to disagree with you. It's and especially, you surround a car and the person in the car has seen enough videos to know that where that goes. And it's just like one act, instigates another, and it escalates the situation to dude in the car hits the brakes and runs people over. Same, it's with police. It's like the V for Vendetta escalation of events. If nobody's seen V for Vendetta, watch it. I have to watch it with my kid to show her. It's just prescient, I believe is the word. Longreach Jones says, Bible quote is, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. Meaning, take care of your own big problem before looking at other small problems. I like it, and I like it a lot. Thank you, by the way, Long Preach. Do I agree with universal income? Why? I mean, I don't know why it's different than EI. I guess it depends on how it materializes. It's EI or UI, depending on how you want to call it, is meant to be the safety net for people who cannot, not through decisions and not through poor decisions, but who are unable to provide for themselves. UBI, what deterrent effect is that going to have on people being productive? It's when you start getting certain things, and you don't, it deters. I've had discussions with farmers out in Quebec, and they're bringing up workers from South America, and I said, why aren't you hiring local? And he says, well, because people get more, working EI and then being, working under the table for half the year and then being on EI for the other half. And why would they want to work for $13 an hour in a field? Other people are going to do this, and they're happy to do it. And we bust them up from South America. I mean, that's the flip side. It has real practical problems. It has consequences. If lawyers and judges are held to a higher standard, then police should be held to the higher standard. I agree, but judges are virtually immune from any consequences of their poor performance. Lawyers are the only ones who are really held to a higher standard because they get complaints to the bar and are spanked left, right, and center by the system. Judges, good luck. As far as the police, I'd be happy with them being held to the same standard as someone with a license to carry a handgun in the state. I agree. They have the power and they carry around lethal force. They should be held to a higher standard for using that lethal force when they use it. Oh yeah, if you aren't liberal by the time you're 20, you don't have a heart. If you're not conservative by the time you're 40, you don't have a brain. That's the expression. Mr. Rover Pilot, thank you very much. Make a law to ban a crime. Perfect, Trudeau. Yeah, that's okay, so what do we got here? We got Candy de Leon. Voter ID can be tampered with as well when evil wants to carry out their evil. There's no question. Voter ID. I mean, I had fake ID as a kid. It can be. The only question is more easily or less easily than mail-in ballots. I mean, that's the idea. Which one is more easy to tamper with? Showing up with ID in person is much more of a deterrent of fraud, even if it's possible, than mail-in ballots or something that's not done in face. Let's see what we got here. We got Best DJF. I told my sister that she acts like a cult member. She said that she has her own family and will run naked to vote for people who pay her. Okay. Very interesting. Best DJF. Just don't identify yourself. Okay, what do we got here? What do you think about Tulsi dropping the lawsuit against HRC? Do you think costs she couldn't afford? I didn't know she dropped the lawsuit. Screenshot. I didn't think she was going to win the lawsuit. I didn't think she was going to drop the lawsuit. That's disappointing. Okay, I'm going to have to look into that. I want to see, was it a voluntary dismissal like with Musk versus Elon versus Alameda County? That was way far beyond the stage of Elon Musk. So I'm curious. Maybe she wasn't going to get the depositions. Who knows? That's interesting. Water Jabber says, my understanding is that excessive force can be used in a civil rights case, but I can't find it being used in a criminal case. Excessive force. Oh, it has to be able to use in a criminal case. That doesn't sound right. I'm just going to screenshot that as well and bring it to Barnes tomorrow. That sounds potentially inaccurate to me, but I don't know better. That's just my reflexes. I'm fairly certain I've seen criminal cases where excessive force was an issue. What do we got here? Sean Nemo says, I think the best solution for police misconduct is 1, eliminate qualified immunity and make it a crime to turn off your body cams. That's another thing. Mandatory body cams. I don't know what the cost is. That's the issue. Is I don't know what the argument is, and I asked it on Twitter. I don't know what the argument is for why it is not mandatory already. Logistics is one thing, but if it's cost, that's another. It should be mandatory, and there should be sanctions, not firing and not depending on the context, but there should be sanctions for turning it off. How many likes are we at? Doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. You don't strike me as a fight fan, Frei. I love UFC. You should check out some of the. So incidentally, I vlogged from these Montreal Fight League amateur fights. Where are they held? In Kanawagi? They're not held in Kanawagi. I forget where they're held. But no, I love UFC. I love UFC, and I love it unapologetically, even though I know it upsets people, because people don't like the violence or the blood or the breaking bones when Anderson Silva shattered his leg off Chris Weidman. Traumatizing. I invited people over to watch that fight. It was their first fight, and they said, "Oh, how is it?" I say, "It's fine. It's fine." They're like, "It's all contained. It's well supervised." That noise echoed through my brain and their brains for longer. Foreign Particle says, at some point in this stream, can you please justify your support of the SCOTUS minority position in Reach Earth gathering restrictions? I'll do it right now. If no one's seen my vlog the other day, it was the Elon Musk update on the South Bay Pentecostal Church. My rationale for why I tend to agree with the minority is I think it's an arbitrary distinction to say that churches are more like theaters, but not like restaurants. So churches can operate at 25% capacity or 100 people max, whereas restaurants can operate at 50% capacity. I understand people are going to say, okay, they're less like restaurants, they're more like lecture halls and concerts, and the similar restrictions apply to restaurants, to concerts and lectures. I tend to say no, they're quite like office space. They're quite like restaurants where you have saliva transferring onto utensils. And I think it may be wrong, but I think when it comes to religion and the exercise of religion, in as much as I'm not religious and it's not my thing, I appreciated that it is fundamental and beyond fundamental to people. And if you're going to restrict it, it better be a logical and coherent and narrowly tailored restriction, which it wasn't. To say that restaurants can open at 50% capacity, office space can open, factories can open, but churches have to be at 25% capacity, maximum of 100 people. I don't buy it. And I also don't like the justification of the majority to say in areas fraught with with scientific uncertainty, the powers have to be broad for the elected officials. To me, when there's broad uncertainties, that shouldn't give you carte blanche expanded powers. It should actually be the other way around, because I know and I'm predicting the way that statement is going to be used in the future. We don't know. So we're going to come in with constitutional restrictions that I think are untenable and unjustifiable and not narrowly restricted. You can't say on the one hand, when it's fraught with medical uncertainties, they have to have a broad range of powers, but they have to be narrowly circumscribed when they infringe on constitutional rights. That's my rationale. Disagree with it or agree with it, but that is it. Hope I explained it clearly. I think I did. Okay. Andrea, weird footnote. My mom, who was black and born in 1938, knew a slave. She has seen a lot of the race equality movement in the U.S. What's funny is that since I am mixed race, I've been told I have no voice since I'm passing. So this is the intersectional aspect of identity politics that is discouraging and upsetting to some extent. It's almost like people approving or denying current. Oh no, I'm going to leave that. People approving or denying of people's own life experiences based on the criteria that they have now set out as to who gets to have a voice and who doesn't. You're not X, you don't get to have a voice. You're not Y, you don't get to have a voice. You're not enough, you don't get to have a voice. You fit the criteria, you get to have a voice. Don't agree with me, you no longer get to have a voice. It's but that's the nature of discourse in the social media age. Is it's discourse when we agree, and it is silencing when we don't. Andrea, thank you very much, by the way. 1938. Your mom was born in 1938. So you must 1938. Okay, that's amazing. My grandmother was born in 1916, passed away in November at 103. It was amazing what she lived through. 1938 is you're too young to remember World War II, past the Great Depression, but living through Cold War, Korean War, civil rights. It's an amazing 100 years that we went through. Jessica Core says the problem with the body cams is the data. The video is considered official record and has to be stored for 5 years. Well, okay, so how about I could solve that. If nothing happens, you can record over it. You only have to preserve it for 5 years when there's been an incident, a reported incident. It's like dash cams. They have dash cams on their cameras, and they record over old recordings when there hasn't been an incident. If there's been an incident, record it, save it for 5 years. No incidents in a day, recycle it. But so that's it. Let's see here. I see a lot of. Well, hold on. I got to see this because I see a lot of question marks. Breaking it. Kingston Matt Kingston is in Ontario. Has been fired after a Facebook group he allegedly administered shared offensive racist memes. Legality administration not poster. Public disclosure of a private fact. I don't know. Again, you got to know the details, and too much stuff to not know. David Dorn has stuck with me too. It's beyond tragic. It's beyond tragic. And you have people, you have victims, and you have heroes. George Floyd is a victim, period. David Dorn is a hero, period. And the senselessness of it. It's the senselessness of it. For what? For what? For some materials at a store? You'll never make sense of it. Have you seen atheism? Have you seen atheism as unstoppable videos where Kim Kardashian is trying to get murderers out of jail? And I have not seen it. I have not seen the videos. No. Okay, so let's see what else we got here. What are my thoughts on Lockean revolutions? I'd have to Google it before I can have a thought on it. Let me go all the way back up here. And now let's bring it back here. What do we got? Kelly Graham. Seattle police are not supposed to turn on their body cams until incident starts. That's too late by that point. That's the problem. The technology is there to have constantly running body cams while you're on duty. It just recycles over the 45 minutes of last images. If an incident is lasting more than 45 minutes, push a button so that it just continuously records, turn on another cam. This was negotiated by the ACLU, who does not want body cams on all the time. Why would the ACLU not want body cams on? I'm going to look into that. It's curious. But turning it on when the incident starts, by that time, it's too late. You've missed material information that affects the incident that has already started. I would have them running. You're on duty. Technology's there. Battery power is there. Recycle it. If there's an incident, hit a button, turn on a second cam, continue to record. Do not delete over the cam that's running. By and large, I don't know how often incidents last more than 45 minutes or an hour and a quarter, but there's good battery power on these things, even on the GoPro. But GoPros, you don't need GoPro quality body cam, just something less. Okay, what do we see here? Kelly Uncivil says, way to go, ACLU. This is uncivil law. Okay, so let's see this. I think. What do we want to talk about? I guess we're not going to talk about Jake Paul. I'll do that tomorrow. It's not going to be anything particularly insightful. It's just people don't think twice about what they're doing when they put stuff on the internet. Viva Frei. Hold on. Viva Frei. Mr. Sting. My mom was born in 1982. Mon père 1901. My grandmother in 18. Oh, my mom. Mr. Sting, I don't want to ask how old you are, but if your mom's born in 1918, you got to be as old as my dad, 75, give or take. Who decides what constitutes a racist meme? Well, this is the other thing. Is like we're getting into an era now where like it's not even overt acts that are qualified deemed to be racism. Like even not doing something now, people will spin it as racism, and it's what happens when words lose meaning, when actions lose. When words lose meaning and when you can basically twist language to make it what you want. Don't do this, it's racism. I saw one tweet that says, unless you do whatever the tweet was saying you do, you're as guilty as the perpetrators of what happened to George Floyd. It's nice that now it's not only a question of people protesting, it's people now dictating what other people don't do makes them what they are. It's almost 1,000 likes. I have 2 nephews and nieces mixed, but they are as white as I am, so I'm sure they're not going to get bullied in school. Linda Smith. Whenever I see someone writing in all caps, I think of my aunt. Brian Levy. What can you say about the Durham probe? Nothing. I don't know enough about it. There's too many things. And this is the thing, like, I think a lot of people, most people appreciate it, but there are too many things to keep track of all of them. And it's a burden because everyone wants to have an opinion on everything, but you have to know enough to know when you can have an opinion. The ACLU is the Anti-Civil Liberties Union right now. Thank you very much, Bobcat. We got Best DJF says, I'm pointing out it's all about the money. The government is too big and everywhere. That's why liberals love the government and socialism. And then, well, there's no question about that. I mean, it's why education has been politicized the way it has, and academia has been politicized. It's why the media in Canada has been politicized. When you are not dependent, but rather when you're just even reliant, or when you're the beneficiary of millions of dollars of federal funding, you don't want to burn the bridges or piss off, bite the hand that's feeding you, literally. So it's how academia gets politicized. It's how media gets politicized, and it's money poisons. Nobody's going to deny that. Nobody can deny that. Dapper Dave. You can have limits for attendance at church, but not for protesting. How Dem's going to justify voting by mail for CV safety? No, that's the issue. It's like, okay, I can't have 25% capacity at a church, but I can have 10,000 people on the streets, and I can have city governors and mayors handing out face masks for safe protests. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know what's wrong with that. Did I miss Lisa von Zamet? Thank you for all your legal insights. Hold on one second. I see a super chat, and it's not possible that I missed it. And it might not only be possible, I might have missed it. Lisa Von, I'm going to read it out loud if I missed it, because thank you very much for the super chat. It's love from Beijing. Oh, cool. Viva Frei. Thanks for all your amazing insights. You inspire many. Thank you very much. Stay foxy. Stay foxy. I can't believe I missed this super chat, because ordinarily I would have seen a red. Okay, we got body cams include time before the button is pressed. Okay, I missed it. I'm gonna have to read it out loud. I'm sorry. Lisa Yvonne Zamet, $100 super chat. Thank you very much. I'm very sorry for missing it. Thank you for all your legal insights. Thank you very much for the super chat. It's been tremendous. And I'm sorry I missed it. Okay, let's do it. Let's wind it down. It's almost 11:30. Do I want to get neurotic and finish this at 2 hours on the nose, or do we go and just end it now? Let's see if I can get some. I'm going to get some more questions in here that are okay. Viva. Protesters have carried signs saying silence is violence, while journalist activists have said on cable news that looting isn't violence. Language is dying a painful death. It's Orwellian in the sense that it's like you don't even want to demonize your enemies. You want to demonize people who might support you, but might want to support you in different ways. And it's like it's compelling conduct. It is what it is. I think it is what it is. But then I think it really is just the effect of, if you're not on social media, you don't see it, and you don't get repelled by it, and you don't feel the pressure of it. So the world that's just going to shut down social media, man. I don't need to go to Twitter and I don't need to feel compelled to tweet something shocking and edgy so I can get some feedback. I don't need to go to Instagram and feel compelled to like post stuff because of social pressure. It's, we do what we think is right. We do it in the way we think is right. And we do it in a way that's meaningful to us without being demonized by other people who are telling us how they think we have to do it in order not to be the enemy. It's crazy. Julian Samuel, super sticker. Thank you very much. Let's see what we got here. What do you think about Judge Sullivan not signing the response? Oh, I didn't notice. I think it's immaterial. It was signed by his attorneys. I don't think he has to sign it. It is funny now that you mention it, though. I don't know what the rules are in the States. In Canada, or in Quebec at least, when you allege facts that are not in the record already, it has to be supported by an affidavit. In the brief that I saw from Sullivan, it's funny, I didn't notice an affidavit. I didn't think twice about it, but it would be ironic if he's accusing the Department of Justice of not having a supporting affidavit in support of their motion, where he didn't have a supporting affidavit in support of his. But no, the signing in law, we say that there are material errors and then there are just purely technical errors, even assuming they're errors, and making a stink about, a typo on a date on an affidavit to invalidate the affidavit. Sometimes it can work, but it doesn't change the substance of it. I wouldn't, at this point, I wouldn't want Sullivan to take back his argument brief. I like what he said in that brief. If I'm the Department of Justice and if I'm Flynn's attorneys, I think Sullivan in that argument brief has effectively made himself unable to. He's built an argument to demand his recusal for being unable to judge that file fairly. So I would like to see the Court of Appeal send it down to the Judge Sullivan and say, render your decision on the Department of Justice's motion to dismiss, and then we'll see what happens. But we'll see. That is going to be a fun thing to follow. Fun in a cynical, thank goodness I'm not Michael Flynn way, but meanwhile, Michael Flynn, he'll make it out. The dude is a fighter. And, there's some people who will not let the circumstances crush them. Getting back to, so you've been publicly shamed, but Flynn also, he's not going to let the circumstance crush him. I think that the monopoly on state power should go back to the states themselves, not counties and cities. It's more rare that you need state trooper that is unprofessional. Yeah, there's going to be issues about, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to have to be revisited, especially in governor, county versus state versus federal. There's a lot of competing interests, and we're seeing it in New York now. It's amazing. Gregory Stike says, what happens when the churches start to urge church attendance on the society to improve morality? Bye First Amendment. Well, the funniest thing here is, I don't think in Quebec we'd even have that problem. I think we suffer from lack of church attendance. So the idea that it's an interesting thing to see that there's actually so much attendance in the States that they have this issue. I don't know that churches are full in most parts of Quebec anymore in any meaningful sense. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to get these super chats and then we're going to end it so that we don't. Oh, hold on. How did this happen? Tabarouette, which is French for super chat sticker. Okay. If you didn't post a black square on Instagram, you're legally gullibles. First of all, I didn't know that movement was going on. I didn't do it. I was on Instagram. I didn't understand what was going on, but I'm contrarian to some extent. I especially don't like doing things when people start telling me I have to do them to show what I do. I make my impact in the way that I think is actually meaningful above and beyond an Instagram post. And raising issues of injustice where I think there are, in a meaningful sense, that's actually going to have an impact. Okay, so I got that. Gregory Sankey, thank you very much. Okay, so that was JB. What do we got here? Gregory Sankey. What happens when okay, so we got that. Don't want to go too far down. Best of gist. Everybody knows it's about the money. It's the government subsidies and the contracts and tax cuts. So why the evil corporations and movie studios love women so much? Why they love China, Saudis, and Muslims? It's a big statement. But the subsidies and contracts, there's no question. There's no question. It's systemic corruption. It's systemic corruption. Anybody who's been involved in it, anyone who's seen it knows it. It's systemic corruption. Let's see what we got here. Okay, we got, I think that might be a mistake. Dick Haven, don't post another super chat. Whatever, if you had a question, put it in there. It's like when we all paying for it at this point, and it just seems more money for the government corps. Well, that's what I said at one point, incidentally, is, the government's going to increase their power as a result of all of the mayhem. They're going to increase the lockdown. They're going to increase martial law if they haven't already done it. That's what we call it here. It's funny who makes money. It's funny, just whoever has been making money off this schmendrick. It's an interesting thing. Okay, we're going to go. I'm going to end this at 2 hours on the nose. I'm going to end this right now. Steal your mind. I feel as if police being over-equipped is contributing to a lot of the police being more violent. I wanted to talk about Waco because I saw the series and it was mind-blowing. Yet hyper militarizing the police. You give people tools, they're going to use them. That's the reality. And they're going to use them possibly when they don't actually have to. Or they're going to be more eager to use them when they might otherwise be more reluctant to use them under other normal circumstances. Okay, we're going to do this. Danger of UBIs is government gives 2 people for compliance. Danger of UBIs. Okay, we're doing this. Hold on, we're doing this. I'm going to end this at Candace Davis. Thank you very much. People, thank you for coming in. One last one. Neil Ben Shapiro said charging George Floyd with second-degree murder may be the mistake because they are overcharging. We'll see. We'll see. Thank you all for tuning in. This was amazing. Tomorrow night, Robert Barnes, tune in. It's going to be fantastic. I'm going to try to end this broadcast right now at 2 hours on the nose. Peace out. Stay healthy. Stay safe, people. Everyone, good night. Thank you for tuning in.